Hello everybody. Now in my last video I talked a little bit about Robert Kiyosaki and the cash flow quadrants. And I want to break that down a little bit just in case that was a little unclear. And so basically one of the things I talked about is how you want to think about the purchases you make. The last video was really all about shiny object syndrome, and it led me to talk about Robert Kiyosaki and the quadrants. And again, that just might have been a little unclear because I mentioned that most of the products that we tend to bake and we buy tend to keep us in the S quadrant. They tend to keep us in the mode where we're probably going to be more along the lines of being self-employed. In other words, we tend to buy those things that we've got to manipulate, that we've got to do them in order for them to make us money. And so one of the things that you want to think about, again, in terms of the kinds of things that you purchase, the kind of assets that you are adding into your business, is it ultimately leading you to the kind of internet marketing business that you ultimately want, that you ultimately desire? And so the other thing is that I sort of wanted to explain is that, you know, if you haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and you haven't read Cash Flow Quadrant, you might have been a little lost by that concept. And at the end of this, I'm going to suggest that you go ahead and get those books. I've got a link to them that's on my site that you can get them, or you can just kind of find them on Amazon or any used bookstore. You know, it's an old book going back to 1994. I'm sure they've done updates, but you need to get these books, and they're very important, I think, for you as an internet marketer. And I'll explain a little bit why I think that as we go through this discussion. Now, even as an internet marketer, and this is important, you really do want more. You have to strive for more. I have to strive for more than the internet lifestyle. In other words, this is less about trying to, you know, be at the point where I can be in vacation anytime I want. That's cool, but we really do want to move beyond that. There's more to what we're doing in internet marketing. There's more at stake. There's more possible. There's more that this can provide for us if we really understand that big picture financial game that I think that's being explained in Rich Dad Poor Dad. And so at risk of doing something that you probably heard from speakers that have really broken this down, I want to just get to the nuts and bolts in terms of internet marketing, so that we can talk about what it means when we're clear on what financial freedom really means. I want to give a nuts and bolts definition. And in Rich Dad Poor Dad, that is defined as how long can you live at your current standard of living, right? So whatever your expenses are, you know, in order for you to maintain how you live, so you don't have to cut any expenses, you don't have to, you know, stop going to the grocery store, you don't have to cut anything down. If you decided not to do any work, like right now, how long could you live at the current standard of living? In other words, what will your business assets, what will your business systems provide to you in terms of income to cover those expenses? So in other words, the question is not whether or not you can live the internet lifestyle. The question is whether or not, do you have the assets? Do you have the business systems that are providing income to you at a faster rate than your expenses are coming in? And at the very least, if you don't have assets that are working for you, if you don't have assets that give you that income without your having to do anything to them, do you at least have a business system that provides enough income over your expenses so that you can begin to invest in those kinds of assets that do give you those kinds of cash flows? So we want to define freedom, right, in terms of how long, and we want to continue to extend that length of time to, you know, going beyond 6 months, going beyond 9 months, going beyond years, going out to 2 years, or going even into indefinitely, so that we have systems that do not require our direct input, but yet continue to work and indeed continue to improve, so that they're throwing off the kind of cash flow, again, that cover our current standard of living. Now, one of the things that I think that's really cool about this whole concept, And for those of you who have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it's really probably time to revisit. And I'll tell you why. Because he wrote this book just as the information age was beginning to take off. In other words, he didn't really have a concept of what internet marketer is. I actually think that he's probably a pretty decent information marketer in terms of the things that he's done. I think he brought in gentleman Mike Dillard, if you're familiar with him from the MLM world, to really help him do some marketing in terms of turning his digital assets into systems that really work for him. But he really wrote the book and defined these concepts at the point at which the information age was beginning to take off. He didn't really have a whole concept of it. And so as a result of that, he really describes the kind of assets that throw enough income to cover your expenses, the kind of business systems as real estate and brick and mortar businesses. That is what he has in mind. He doesn't really even have in mind what an online business system can actually do. And if you start thinking about what it really means to have, I think that the older term is virtual real estate, but to really have an online asset that's growing and improving without your input and throwing you cash and giving it to you, then you really do have something that is creating wealth for you, not just the internet lifestyle. Again, we want more. We have to strive for more than the internet lifestyle. We've got to be able to strive for the kind of leverage so that we'll be able to create the assets that will give us wealth. Now, here's a question for you in your internet marketing business, in terms of what you're striving for, in terms of what you're building, in terms of how you're looking at your business and what you really want it to do. Are you building for the short term? And really, when we talk about shiny object syndrome, you're going to have to evaluate that question, because when you buy products and when you buy software and when you buy things, you need to evaluate whether or not you're looking for cash from a loophole. And again, and I said this on a number of webinars, there's absolutely nothing wrong from making money in what I call the arbitrage or the gap or a loophole that's currently open that will probably close after some time. There is nothing wrong with that. But you cannot build your entire lifestyle on that. So the question is, in terms of your time and where you're putting your time, internet marketing, and really, please hear me on this, it's less about the money than it is about the time, right? You are leveraging time in internet marketing. One of the things that you try to do by creating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 simultaneous income streams is that you want them operating for you at the same time, so you can double, triple, quadruple your income at the same time. The goal in internet marketing is to leverage time. It's not just about money. You've got to kind of get that in terms of how you structure your business. And so the second question is, are you building? Are you buying? Are you structuring? Are you learning so that you can have the kind of business that will give you assets to pay your expenses without your having to do any work? And again, I know that we have discussions in internet marketing about outsourcing, and those are great discussions. They're not enough, because we've got to go beyond just outsourcing. We've got to be able to build so that these assets, these online assets, right, they actually will work for us and improve for us if we're out of them. Can we build a business in that way? And I think that you can, if you understand and you start from that premise as you're starting right now. Now, this is where those quadrants that I talked about really come into play. And so you start thinking about the quadrants as he defined them. The employee quadrant. In other words, you go to work for a living. You are paid for what you do. You're looking for the security in being an employee. And so you give your all to your, nothing wrong with that. That is the way you want to earn your income. That is just the way you should do it. If that is your primary source of income as an employee, that is fantastic. And it gives you security. Self-employed people, generally, when they get when things go sideways, they're able to crank up their work, they're able to crank up their activity, they're able to leverage their knowledge, their wisdom, their resources in order to generate more income. In other words, the self-employed person or business requires that owner to plow something into it continually, right? It is a continued plowing in of something, in addition to the fact that primarily the self-employed person has to plow in their time. The employee has to plow in their time. Now, when you come over into the other quadrants, right, and this is the important distinction between employee and self-employed and business and investor. As a business owner, when you really want to have a business, you are trying to leverage other people's time, right? You're trying to leverage other people's time. In other words, you want to have people working for you, improving your business, getting it, and maybe making your system work without you having to do it. If your time is free, you can then look for other opportunities, either to invest or find new businesses to own, or even to get into new markets. So in other words, you are taking, as a business owner, and this is one of the things that a friend of mine, Dwayne Golden, talks about a lot. Are you willing to take a little bit of a lot? Right? So it's not just about you being the head cheese and you take it, you only got one person working with you, so you don't have to pay anybody, and so you get a lot of a lot. Right? So you make a lot. You don't make as much as if you have a team working for you in a business, because you just can't do as much. So you take most of it, but you make less. Now, as a business, you began to multiply based on the people that you bring into that business who are making your system work, and you're generating more income, and even though you're taking less on a percentage basis, you're making a lot more, and so you continually grow, and that growth allows you to grow your income. As a business owner, you are leveraging the time of other people in the business. As an investor, right? Again, this is the supreme investment of time, because you're not only leveraging business, you're leveraging other people's money, right? You're leveraging other people's money. In other words, you are adding into the bit to a business or to a venture, so that income that you invest can be given back to you. Your money is actually working. When you start thinking about this in terms of online business and everything that you know, you're going to be thinking differently than you probably are getting emails about. You need to be thinking on this side of the quadrant where they're talking about being business owners and investors. Being self-employed and an employee means that you'll make a lot of money, and you can make a lot of money, but your time is taken, right? Your time is taken. You must invest time to be a good employee and to be self-employed. As a business owner, as an investor, you leverage time and you leverage money, and that is really where this entire the growth in your business and in your income and really in your quality of life comes, because you can start thinking about how long you can have that standard of living without having to do any work, right? So you don't want to continue to build yourself into a self-employed hole in everything you do. You don't want to build yourself into being an employee if you're a freelancer. Your ultimate goal is to build a business, right? And that will again allow you to leverage other people's time, and then to buy assets that allow you to leverage other people's money. Now, again, most of what we buy, is going to keep us self-employed. That was really the point that I made in the last video and talking about shiny object syndrome. Most of what we buy is going to keep us self-employed if you don't do it right. That's why I say, one of the best investments that you can get anytime is always going to be private label rights content. You're really in the right place and doing the right thing if that's what you're doing, because everything that you're buying is raw material, and when you build your factory right, you're going to be able to take your raw material and continually turn it into profitability. And so I really want to get to that in ultimately in another series of videos, but we really do have to break down shiny object syndrome first and some other things before we can get to that. Now, the other thing that we really want to think about is, and this is ultimately where you have to be. This is ultimately where you have to be in terms of your thinking, and you have to be able to answer this question. If you are not in internet marketing to leverage your time, you are probably wasting your time, because you're going to build a job that eventually you will hate. You're going to be building yourself something that will require more and more and more of your time. If you are creating a job and you're not creating something that's going to leverage your time, you're wasting your time. There's a lot easier ways to make money. There are a lot easier ways to pay your bills. There are a lot easier ways to go on a nice vacation than doing internet marketing, if that's what you want to do. You've got to do this in a way when you buy something, and you got to start thinking everything you buy, everything you look at, everything you do should be leveraging your time. Now, the last thing that I really want to talk about is, and I'm just going to blow through this really quickly because I really want to end this video now, or this discussion if you're listening by MP3. What quadrant do you want to be in? I mean, ultimately, that's going to determine how you build your business, going to determine what kind of stuff you buy and how you structure it. Again, it doesn't have to look like anything in an information product. You don't have to do what someone else does, even if they're having success in it, if it's not going to get you to where you want to be in this business, right? Now, most people aren't even keeping the diary of what they're doing every day to attain success. Let me tell you why that's important. Now, if you don't really have a documented process, you don't really know what you're doing. When you have success, let's say you're doing CPA marketing, and you know whenever it comes to CPA marketing, everybody does it a little differently. Everybody attains success a little differently. And if you don't have a way of documenting your processes, more than likely it's going to be hard for you to go back and outsource that process. It's going to be hard for you to be able to give it over to somebody so you can take a vacation. So here's the action item. Here's what I want you to do before we get too far into the series on shiny object syndrome or on information overload. I want you to get, if you're watching this video or you're going to subscribe to this series, which I hope you do, you need to get, even if you read it before, I want you to get Rich Dad, Poor Dad and read it. And as you read it, I want you to think about your online business. I want you to think about how the concepts apply to online business. Does real estate apply? Does businesses apply? Is it self-employment? What are you doing? Apply the concepts. Ask questions of yourself, because it's really the key, I think, to really starting to think about what kind of business you're building and how you're going to buy things and how you're going to go about choosing a niche. All of those things are important. Read cash flow quadrant. It is vital that you understand those quadrants. It's vital that you understand how an investor thinks. It's vital that you understand how a business owner thinks. It's vital that you understand how a self-employed person thinks. It's vital that you understand how an employee thinks, because most of us are encouraged to think about thinking like a self-employed person. Even when we talk about quote unquote a real business, we're really talking about a real self-employed business in most cases. Right? And again, I'm not trying to run anybody down. I'm not trying to say that anybody has been treating you wrongly. I'm just saying that when you buy and when you do stuff, start thinking about if are you building your business, and what kind of business are you building? Are you building the kind of business that's going to put you, or that has you, in the quadrant you want to be in? And even if you're not in that quadrant yet, you have to get your mind there anyway. So as you start to build that kind of business, where is your brain right now? Is your brain in the self-employed quadrant? Is your brain in the business owner quadrant? Is your brain in the investor quadrant? Because that's going to really determine how you're going to build this business. Now, again, read these books. Start thinking about how your thinking in terms of digital businesses fit. Okay, what are the advantages and disadvantages? And then we are really going to get to that in future videos. So the next video, we're going to be going to step 2 of shiny object syndrome, how you can overcome it. And so I hope that this was helpful for you, because I talked about the quadrants in my last video, step 1 on shiny objects. And if you haven't seen that and you're coming to this video, probably want to step back and take a look at that video, which is the first in this series on shiny object syndrome. And so with that, thank you, and I appreciate you. What I want you to do is to make sure to hit the subscribe button so that you get all the videos. And then what I also want you to do, take the link to this video, share it with your friends, share it on social media, share it in Facebook and Google Plus and all those places. If you really want to help somebody, give them this video and let them just kind of let them think through these things for themselves. So with that, thanks. I will see you in my next video.